allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to call to order the Jefferson County Local Development Corporation. This is our September meeting. This time I'd open the floor, privilege of the floor, and anyone wants to address the board.
We can do it after the.
We can do it later then. Yep.
Everyone's received the minutes from our July meeting. Are there any additions and/or corrections?
No, sir.
Entertain a motion in a second.
Move.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you. Treasurer's report.
We're on target to earn approximately what the revenues are, and we're on target to spend a little less. We only have one more month till the crystal ball's a little more clear. Based on the numbers in front of us here, probably about 120,000 surplus, but I'm sure
pretty close.
we may spend a little bit of that, but it'll be a surplus.
I don't anticipate anything right now.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's anything earth-shattering, so there'll be a surplus. It could be as high as 120K, I'll report. That's page 18 of your board packet, excuse me. And page 19, 20, 21 are blow-ups of the three major sub-accounts within here to show also, and they all, again, show some form of surplus. I was going to ask a question, Lyle, or I'm not sure who to address. I'll address it to Lyle. On page 21 on the safety training. Sorry, I read that wrong. I thought we had 13,000 left to spend. I looked at the wrong column.
No,
I
not,
made a note.
Yeah.
Okay. Page 22, our balance sheet. The quick assets have gone up about 63,000 over the last 2 months because this is 2 months worth of reporting. I'm skipping the July balance sheet and moving to August. The receivables are down about 46,000 from over the last 2 months. Total current assets are up about 16,000. Had been keeping track off to the side on. We were spending a lot more of our money, and it actually is decreasing. So we've over the last 9 months, our quick assets have gone down 75,000. I think we were at 500,000 at one point. We were kind of spending money, and that's correcting itself. Total assets up about 13,000 over the last 2 months. Total liabilities down 5,000, and total capital up about 19,000 over the last 2 months. Page 23, our total receivables with the accounts shown here are down about 42,000. We have the top two, I guess, are past due. Do we have any update on Acadia or anything further to add on?
not a thing.
Okay.
No response from them, no contact, nothing.
Okay. And nothing more to report on AYDM? I said it wrong.
We've heard from their attorney,
Okay.
and I need to discuss some things with Joe. before,
Okay.
you know.
Very good. As a question, this wasn't in the board packet. You had a report that looked like that in all the packets before?
Oh, that was to show you, that was to give you an indication of one of the reports we have to post
Okay.
online, and it goes into the state.
All right, so I just noticed it wasn't here.
Yeah,
It just
that was
something you did
a
once.
one-time
Okay.
thing. The information is here.
Okay. That's the treasurer's report. I would make a motion to accept as presented.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you. Committee reports. Area of Energy.
I believe we had 2 meetings since we've met last. We had one in August when we invited all the taxing jurisdictions in that were going to be affected by the Oya project. which was up in Clayton, Orleans. So we had the school districts, the towns, and the county here, and we talked about different things about what a pilot could look like, the community benefits from the project, and we talked a little bit about the land use. Yesterday, we met with the OYA, the two guys from OYA. Had a great meeting, real productive meeting. I think everybody left that meeting yesterday feeling good about the project. We talked a little bit more about details, how to come up with the fair market value for the project. We talked about depreciation of the assets over 25 years, and we talked about the length of the pilot. And then we threw around a bunch of other numbers and stuff to get started with, but it was a real productive meeting yesterday, I thought.
Was the meeting only with the committee or, and oil?
Yes, yeah.
Not
Energy.
affected tax and jurisdiction?
Correct, yeah.
Don has sent an email out to set up the next meeting with the AFPs.
So through this process you've been working at, are you coming up with a game plan that we can kind of use as a model? Will this work out as a model for some?
We're hoping. Say better after we get through it, but yes, it appears that we're learning more about, you know, the fair market value and the dollar per megawatt type thing. I think, yes, to answer your question, yes, I think it will.
Good.
Bill, did it come up, in probably too much of detail, but I understand Clayton is rewriting its solar law again. They had some public hearings and they kind of scrapped what they had and making it a little bit more complete with their comprehensive plan. I have no idea if that.
It doesn't
affects the
apply to
project.
Oya because they've already
Okay.
got their approval.
I wasn't sure if that was the answer or not.
Thanks, Joe, because I didn't know the answer there.
I kind of figured that was the answer, but I didn't.
They've got their
really-
approval for both Orleans and Clayton already.
Perfect.
If I might, today's question is, we are looking at two different types of projects right now. This is a community solar project, and then there's the others, which are the larger ones under the PSC Article 10 review. We haven't had any discussions on how to move forward with that. I think it'd be a similar process getting to the end, but I'm not sure that you could take what we're looking at for these terms and just roll it into the next one without a lot of discussion.
I understand that, but, so, because we've heard of possible other community ones, you know, one in Adams, one in Schmoll, and, you know, all around, so this can kind of.
I would think it'd be a good template for other community solar projects.
Good.
Mr. Chairman, I might
Yes.
add, from a staff point of view, Bill and Paul and Kent have given us some very important dialogue with the participants, both on the developer side and the taxing jurisdiction side. And it's a complicated process for a variety of reasons. And we've finally gotten to a point now where we've distilled a lot of complicated issues down to a level that people, I think, who are affected by all this will be able to understand. So we've got to finish our process as an IDA board once the committee finishes its work and we get to a point where there's general agreement on all sides, that is the developer side and the APJ side. And I think we've done a pretty good job of getting ourselves there. But you don't realize how complicated these things are until you start realizing that things like the 2% property tax cap, school aid, state aid, that type of thing, all are significantly impacted by work that we are doing here. So it's not a simple question of throwing a couple of numbers on the table and making it work. So the dialogue has been pretty extensive, and I would credit the committee with doing some fine work there.
I would credit the representatives from OYA for opening up like they did. I'm not sure if we had someone that was playing, well, that's confidential routine with us, we would have gotten where we are, because there was nothing we asked that they wouldn't answer.
They were the same way when they were at the towns
I
as
mean,
well.
nothing was
Yeah.
considered confidential in our discussions. Anything we asked, they answered.
And that's, by the way, not an expectation we always have. I mean, the developers are in the game to make money. And as a result, sometimes they prefer not to talk about the aspects of their development. But in this case, as Paul points out, and Paul asked some damn pointed questions, and they were willing to step up and answer those questions effectively. And we learned a lot. I think frankly, all of us, put a lot on the table, learned a lot. So it's a good process.
Question maybe more for Don. So I know the staff has due diligence to do before it comes back to the board. Less or more than 6 months, or I mean, do you have an idea of what the timing is
This
before
one
it comes
is
back?
very fast track. The committee has asked me to set up a meeting immediately with the taxing jurisdictions to talk about what we learned yesterday, which we're in the process of doing. As usual, we get busy people trying to find a date that will work, but that is happening as soon as possible. Then, of course, we will have to do things like public hearings, notifications, those kinds of things. We've got to get approvals from you folks that, as a board, that represents your feelings about what the committee has accomplished. And but that said, Rob, we're going to move this as quickly as possible because there are impacts of aid that the developer needs in order to carry out the project. So, and frankly, the sooner we get it there, the more likely we'll be able to be successful on the next folks who knock on the door. And again, this has been a great learning process for us, and frankly, around the state, a lot of agencies like ourselves are learning how to do it.
There may be a need for a special meeting to meet the time frames.
Quite possibly.
Okay. And I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, after discussions, this may fall under the UTEP and not be considered a deviation, but we won't know that till after our next meeting with the taxing jurisdiction. Which makes the process a little easier.
Much easier.
Much easier.
Good, thank you.
But here again, to Paul's point, although it may fall under the UTEP, your guidance has always been at this board level that we will inform and get general agreement from the impacted taxing jurisdictions, even though it might fall under the UTEP. Because in this particular case, because as Bill pointed out, we're kind of setting a precedent here to some extent. All projects are different, but at least it gives us something of a blueprint. And we want to make sure that the people we're impacting by our decisions are in a general agreement with how it's being done.
Yep.
We may not get 100% agreement, but certainly we'll work with everyone individually. And thus far, I think the relationship in this issue, thanks to these guys, has been good.
Very good.
Has there been any discussion, part of what's making these projects move forward in New York is the governor's initiative for renewable energy, much more aggressive than other states. But along with that, the school aid formula for addressing whether it was wind or solar is a real stumbling block for the school districts. Is there any discussion in this process moving forward that will take a look at the state's viewpoint of making some exemptions of that school aid formula?
I think that'd be up to the school. I mean, the schools are clearly concerned about state aid, and I don't think any of us are experts with that. And their concern is more, state aids are more of an impactful when it drops out of the pilot than it is in the beginning. Their major concern is the impact in the state tax cap calculation and how pilots are handled there, along with the growth factor that's part of the tax cap. So this project, we aren't talking anywhere near the amounts of pilot payments that you would on a 120 megawatt size facility. So this would be a good place to test it. But if you've reviewed what happened in Copenhagen, where they had to do a tax cap override, the two superintendents told us that that was clearly due to a large pilot coming from the Copenhagen wind project, which I see is down one turbine today.
The disappointing news here is that on one hand, your agency is tasked with developing our community. and we work like heck here at staff level to try to bring projects to the table. On the other hand, if it happens to be the projects with a pilot associated, as most are, that come to our table, it impacts in a very negative way many of the things that it should be a positive. As Paul points out, the 2% property tax cap calculation is impacted by the pilot. It can't be considered as part of the formula, which is the community growth factor. And not only can it not be considered part of the community growth factor as the pilot is ongoing, but after the pilot stops, it cannot ever be, the way the legislation is written, ever be considered as part of that community growth factor. So the challenge for us is, because obviously schools are a big, impactful entity on any of these things, how do we get the schools to understand the value of the tide floating all boats? Because the school is going to end up with something of a mishmash, a wash between the 2% property tax and the school aid formula reimbursement. And so we're trying to figure out a way, and these guys have helped us do that. One of the things we're trying to identify is how to provide value through the project to the schools that are not impacting the school aid or 2% property tax cap. But school aid is the primary one. So in this case, we're trying to find ways where we can provide value to the schools, which might include reduction in expense, or it might include some capital items or something, and work with the developer to say, instead of doing a pro-rata distribution of the proceeds of the pilot, let's make it less for the school system, provide them sources for other things they need, and shift some of that to the other taxing bases, which are really the same taxpayers. You know, the town, the village, the county are really the same taxpayers who pay the school. So if we can reduce their side of the equation, hopefully that's going to help the school going forward. So, but these are all a matter of negotiations, and some developers are willing to do that, some are not. Fortunately with Oya, as Paul just said, and Joe is already, these guys have been terrific. I mean, you know, they're willing to try to find any way to get this project built, which is not the case we're going to find for every one of those. So, sorry to get off on that,
But the answer is, I don't think we know the impact on the state aid and how this is going to affect that.
and by the way, both Paul and Bill and others here have attended sessions we've sponsored to try to get a better understanding about what that is. We've been working with BOCES and their consultant, trying to figure out how best to do this. We've had a couple of meetings, public meetings, which school superintendents and others were invited, because it is a community-wide problem. The governor is unwilling to address this question. It's been, both houses of the state legislature have passed modifications to the bill which talks about the 2% property tax cap. The governor refuses to sign it. The reason for that is he does not want to open this to a political debate because he is afraid that he would lose. At the moment, there are a lot of people who are not particularly kind toward the 2% property tax cap. So with BOCES, we're trying to do everything we can to raise the visibility of that, which is why I'm spending more time than I should here this morning talking about it. But every one of us have a great stake in trying to rectify this, in my view, unjustified approach.
Thanks, Councilman. Building and grounds.
Building and grounds, we met a couple of times, we met with the accountant, and made some modifications to the initial performa, which I believe Don just got back yesterday maybe. We'll be discussing that later on today. We have met with an organization that has showed a lot of interest in the building up there, and with an ongoing discussion, I know Don's been talking to them, and I think we'll have a recommendation to the organization here very soon.
Is the I'm sorry. Okay. Is the organization interested in leasing or buying?
Well, that's what the ongoing discussion is right now, Paul. I'm really not sure which way they're gonna lean at this point.
So,
You got a follow-up?
just one follow-up. We haven't taken sale off the table, have we?
No, we have not.
Okay.
The letter that was sent out for a questionnaire, for lack of a better description. Was that sent to multiple parties yet, and did you get some responses, or are you kind of focusing on the sort of one-on-one?
Yeah, we sent that to all of the, I say all, it sounds like there's hundreds. There's not, there's probably 3 or 4 parties who are particularly interested in some relationship.
One of which is the one Kent's referring to.
One of which is the one that Kent is referring to. They are showing, one is essentially said to us, we want that space, so help us get there.
So you got
we're
2
pretty
to 4,
confident.
2 to 4 very high-level interested.
Exactly, exactly. Then it's a question of how the committee decides to address the problem. Do we sell it? Do we lease it? Do we sell it and lease it? Remember, there are multiple stages in the building. Do we try to encourage further development of the building? Because frankly, this appears to be what could be a major spark plug for downtown development. And it certainly fits within the DRI framework that the center of the city is underway with now. So, I mean, there are a lot of factors here. There is no question we are going to find a good solution for the community with this building. It is presented, I think the fact that we negotiated this 3 or 4 years ago presented a terrific opportunity for the community, so.
I guess the same follow-up I asked about the pilot. So the time frame of this, the current tenant moves out 30 September. We're trying to have a deal in place as soon as practical. And hopefully this year.
Which is why we're.
It's gonna take some time. I think that, you know, kind of speaking for the people in the committee and everything that we've been talking to, there's a couple issues that I've really pushed is, number one, what's best for the community? You know, what's the best use of that building for the community? To go along with that, I don't think that our organization wants to be involved in competing with the private real estate people downtown either. So it's a fine line that you walk through.
But I guess to characterize it like I did with the pilot then,
Right.
less or more than 6 months. We're trying to do this
I think
within
that-
less than 6 months,
I
not more
think
than.
that, we probably would come up with an MOU,
Okay.
less than 6
Okay.
months, you know, final, you know, we're probably gonna
That's
take
fair.
more than 6 months.
Well, there's a couple different scenarios anyway that you're looking at. I mean, the Y would like to take the whole building, but if you give it to them, they'd be more happy to take it. So we're trying to figure out a way, okay, how can you have a tenant in there to offset it?
No,
If they
that's
had to
fair.
buy the building,
Okay.
if they didn't use the whole section, and then there's the group of 3 who spread the building out, you know, there's a lot of
Okay.
variables.
No, that's fair. I mean, that's why I'm making
But I
the,
think we're gonna have the responsibility to maintain that building throughout the winter months and at least the springtime at least, until sun's down.
You'll see, I've asked for a release of the board designated capital reserve fund so that we can address some of those, and we can talk more when that.
it's kind of part of what I was asking the question, to
Yeah.
figure out, you know, if there's some number in our minds that, you know, it's times 6 months or times 12 months. It's some drain of reserves, and I hate to characterize it as that, because it's an investment into
No,
a valuable
absolutely
property,
true,
but
sure.
it's money that is part of your investment decision that we put X in, we gotta get Y back out, and then there's the variable, the Z variable, you know, is it the best use for the community, as you say, and those are always the variables.
One of the interested parties has a current lease which has expired, and so they are under a great deal of pressure to get some answers quickly. Now, what they're looking for is, yes, they have a space, and yes, here are the terms. We can't, there's no way that we can modify the building and so on in that short period of time. It's gonna take some time to do, even though the modifications would be relatively minor, not structural. It's still gonna take quite a bit of time. We're doing an analysis of the building. We just completed one of those. You will be hearing that, not to get off too much into it at the moment, it's really later on, but we are committing some preliminary bids that have already gone to the outside. A lot of moving parts here. I have probably 20 contractors which will need to be extended in terms of their service, at least in the short term. It's, you know, it's building maintenance, it's 24-hour security, it's who checks the air conditioning and the generation and all of those types of things. Plus, frankly, I'm going to recommend to you folks that I'm allowed to hire a part-time individual to manage this, because there's no way that we can be there 24/7. Somebody needs to manage this facility. A week ago Sunday, we had an alarm in the building saying the building was flooding. And, you know, so I got the call, of course, and we're running around trying to figure out what the hell's going on. We have to make sure that that building is protected, so that events like that, if it happened to be reality, it turned out it was not, it was a false alarm, but we wanted to make sure we have people there 24/7. So I'll be, you know, Lyle and I have been kind of putting together some budget numbers and so on, and we're obviously working with our insurance carrier, so that beginning on the 1st of October, we are completely covered. There's a lot of moving parts, but sooner rather than later, Rob, is the answer to that question.
So in the committee's vision, they don't see the IDA hanging on to having a vacant facility in the downtown for a year.
Any length of time, no, absolutely not, Paul.
Which is a good point, that we're not gonna have a hole in downtown.
Absolutely not. The sooner, the better. By the way, just for your information, we're still working with international real estate companies right now to see if we can identify a smaller call center for that facility as well, because, you know, again, remember, we're not in the real estate business, we're in the job creation business. So we're gonna try to do everything we can to instill jobs in that community. And we still have interest in doing such things as a tech center. And we've got local community interest there. We've already framed it out, so it depends on the space. We've got some folks who understand the real estate business down here and there and so on. These folks have asked some good questions, and we're trying to provide the right answers, but lots of moving parts.
Are there 2 or 3 alternatives that are seemingly interested parties now? When it comes to generating revenue for that square footage, do they have a chance of coming anywhere near close to what the call center was generating?
Well, we had an oddball setup with the call center, as you may remember. Our lease had no income related to square foot lease costs. Basically, we had set it up in order to encourage them to come here initially. They would provide a capital reserve fund, and they would also provide an ongoing maintenance fund. And so,
whether you take it as a square footage or an annual revenue stream, I don't care how you do it.
and that's a good question. And what the committee has asked me to do, and we did, we asked a consultant to come in, a real estate CPA, to come in and do an analysis of the building, which he did. He came back with, I thought, a pretty good stab at what that building could be. There are no comparables anywhere in the area. If you look around, you want to try to compare our building with anybody else, you can't. There isn't anybody else that has that quality of a building, or size, or anything else. But he did a pretty good job. Then the committee said, wait a minute, let's consider some other alternatives. And a meeting with him, they changed his direction a little, and he came back with a second report, which I got yesterday. That was the one that Kent was referring to, which is why Kent has called for a meeting after our meetings today to kind of go over that. We've looked at it from, the IDA owns the building and leases it to these community facilities. The IDA sells the building to these community folks, and they worry about how they divvy up the building. Or some partial, because the building is already subdivided. So, you know, does the IDA own some and lease it and sell a piece of it, which is certainly legally possible? All these, and the other factor is, there's other tenants in the building. You know, could we arrange something with them to clear the entire building so that it could be used for all 3 of the agencies who are leaders in the interest in the building? Again, once we define a little bit more on direction, which we should do this morning, we'll be able to answer some of those questions.
But I think to answer your question, that square foot rental versus versus what we're getting for our capital account, I think would be ahead of the,
Ahead of the game.
would be ahead of the game.
Collecting more through rent.
Yes.
Yeah, we were never, that capital reserve fund was never really designed to discourage any potential.
But the big question is, do we want to keep in our business, and that's what we're trying to figure out.
Well, I think, but to me, the opportunity to derive income from that facility to help finance what's going on over here is a noble and worthwhile
And that's
cause.
been our discussion too.
Absolutely.
But you can do it through a lump sum payment and amortize it through savings as well. I mean, if you were to sell the building, it's income either way. It's like winning the lottery. Do you take a lump sum payment or for the rest of your life?
There's also some other avenues that we have the ability to do, which most people don't. We can, for example, provide financing for any organization willing to buy the facility. So we could, I'm liking this a lot at the moment. I can't get ahead of the committee, but we could offer this building for sale and hang on to the paper. And we could do that subordinate to other loans which would be necessary to fully develop the building. So there's a lot of maneuvering we could do, depending on what the committee thinks, what the board thinks, that would give us the kind of income stream, which is why we negotiated this 3 years ago, to make sure that there was a lasting legacy from that building. Because if we hadn't done that, at the end of this month, that building would be gone. Somebody would be selling that on the international level. We'd have no control over it whatsoever. And so this
No
way,
income stream off it either.
yeah.
So our problem is that we're too generous. It's like, if we go Rob's way, we got a chance of gaining 8% return. But if we loan, we're only gonna, we're too kind. We always put it out at 3 and 4%, so.
Again, these are board issues, they're not mine. What I'm gonna try to do is present a bunch of options to the committee, and then the committee's gonna present them to the board. But I do think we have a wonderful opportunity here to enhance our community. I can just see this as being the premier location in all of the city of Watertown. We got close to 80,000 square foot of absolutely pristine space. The evaluation, I don't know if you looked at it, I copied you all, but the evaluation indicates the building is in excellent shape. And when we complete the projects, which are underway right as we speak, that building will be rock solid, and the fact that it's clear span pretty much just gives us a lot of opportunity. So,
Just to the committee, I like the concept of, you said earlier, we're not in the real estate business, and if there's an option to sell it, and like Rob says, even if we're holding the paper, I think that gives us an income stream to help fund the organization and programs moving forward. I'd hope you strongly look, if there's a sale in it, to me, that really gets us out of a lot of headaches, potential headaches moving
does that.
forward.
You're absolutely right, Paul. That building is complicated, and there's a lot to it. I'm learning more as I go down there every day.
Especially, we don't own the whole building.
No, that's
Right.
right. That's absolutely
There's a
true.
lot of outside factors that, but I'd like to move along. Manufacturing.
Yep, three things. As you know, we've got a safety training grant awarded to us back in May, so we're working on finalizing the schedule for the 2019-2020 program. Again, that'll be covering the 3 counties. 2 upcoming events we got working on right now, the annual manufacturing day, where we get arranged for tours for schools, tour local manufacturing facilities. Right now, lining up, getting the word out to the schools and getting manufacturers lined up to host those tours. Last couple of years, we've had 30 or more schools participating with over 1,000 students visiting local manufacturers in the 3 counties, and we're kind of the lead group and kind of coordinating that. And then the third thing coming up is we're working with Advocate Drum, what you know is FDRLO, and Fort Drum, the Soldier for Life Transition Assistance Program. We're doing an employer tour on Fort Drum. I'll send this to you. We sent this out to employers. The idea is being for that workforce challenge, a lot of these transitioning soldiers that possess a variety of skills, from the tech skills to management skills, to even professional engineers. And so to help employers kind of recognize that, there's going to be a day-long tour with some briefings on how do you recruit off Fort Drum, the quarterly career fairs, hiring events, But this will give them, the employer, the chance to tour, see the soldiers working in the workplace, see them working, in IT, working in the welding shop, working on maintenance of various facilities, working in the medical facility. So the employers get a sense for what's these transferable skills, and spend a day there and kind of promoting that. So we've got 31 people signed up so far for that. And we're promoting that pretty much from here all the way to Plattsburgh and down to Syracuse to try to get it. So if we can get employers to recognize that, it helps our employers in terms of recruitment, and it helps retain some of that talent in the area for future opportunities. So.
Questions for Dave?
What's the time? Is that like an 8 to 4 o'clock?
It's going to be 9 to 4. Yeah, it'll be a 9 to 4 thing. Yeah, that's on the manufacturing day. It's going to be October 17th. That's with the schools, and then the employers tour. We had to rely on Fort Drum's availability. That's going to be October 18th.
Thanks, Dave. Marshall?
Good morning, everyone. One kind of super quick little funny story regarding that water thing that Don was talking about. When they called, and Don and I, I think it was Friday, just getting ready to go, and they said, the water department called and said, oh, well, we think you have a leak down there at the stream building, and she said, you're leaking 480 units, and so I was like, oh, geez, well, how much is a unit? 800 gallons, and so that's a get Billy on the phone right now. I had visions of a tidal wave going through downtown, and the maintenance on the phone there. It was a toilet, and we fixed it. And I'm like, oh, okay, so it's not really the end of the world kind of thing, but it did seem like
We had our own tsunami.
Yeah, the whole basement was flooded, everything was ruined, but that wasn't the case. So, don't change of pace there. So we have a software issue regarding our CRM, which is our customer relationship management software. We've currently been using ACT. ACT is so this is basically our database of all of our contacts, and how we will do mail merges, to do invites for programs that we do, as well as things that accounting uses to reach out to people. And we're looking at a couple of different options. I actually just got a quote back from one of our options last evening. It's a pricey deal. This has gone from something that you would buy and you would have for years and years. Our current program is probably 4 or 5 years old, but the thing is, what they do is they stop supporting it, and so then you become it's a vulnerable way to get into to our system, and we are going to have to be making an upgrade, but that is something that we're looking at, and it's an issue. One kind of interesting thing is, though, about it, one of the ones we're looking at, probably the closest, they have an AI, an artificial intelligence module for lead generation, which is really interesting, and one thing that, again, all these modules, they're all add-ons, and they add more to the cost and all these other things, but that's just one thing that I thought was kind of cool that I might share. One other quick discussion about, so as I mentioned at the last board meeting, we have this roundtable discussion regarding the major employers for recruitment /HR. We're seeing if we can kind of pool brains together more than anything, as well as relationships. And we have met with Outbreak as well as the Fort Drum Regional Health Planning Organization, and we're going to be continuing to do outreach. The plan was originally to just bring everybody together and sort of, have a discussion about it. But as we talked about it, and as we had difficulty getting a schedule of 20 different people together during the end of the summer season, we all figured out, geez, each one of these has sort of individual issues that they're dealing with. So we've been, as I mentioned, going out and meeting with them first, and then we're going to be bringing the whole group together. We've had some really interesting discussions, as well as some different options, and there's some things in place currently in the community that we, rather than sort of duplicate things, could kind of work with. So, I thought that was kind of that's been interesting. As I also mentioned about Sackett's Harbor, and they have a 70-acre parcel out there that's been cleaned up, and they have had a sort of a shake-up in leadership there. But we're just going to keep that train moving forward on that site and doing everything we can. I mean, all options are on the table there for that. I'm really, tourism infrastructure to me is a no-brainer, but just kind of see how that goes. You talk to them, and rightfully so, they envision sort of a light manufacturing industrial site there, light being the operative word, employing hundreds of people, and those are pretty tough to go by, as we all know. Two of our Canadian outreach success stories are moving into much larger facilities. Between both of them, they're going to be shortly employing close to 60 people. One of them is moving, Easy Stack is moving out to the PCA building on Old Rome State, which is a much larger facility, and they're going to be bringing in some about $6.5 million worth of equipment coming in, and operators to run that, a little more high tech, a little more high wage. So we're really excited about that. And then the other one is moving into a much larger facility in Dexter. So very pleased with that. As we're talking about that Concentrics building, we're working every day on that and filling that with a proper tenant or tenants. We have had some talk about doing a groundbreaking out at the Ag Park. The date on that kind of keeps changing with the owner of the property's schedule. And that's something that will be on the horizon probably in the middle of September, here, coming up pretty quick. A couple of side notes. I'm on the board of the North Star Food Hub with Ed, and there's been this report's sort of been a long process, but that the Food Hub involves agriculture and involves schools and local food, most importantly, and all of our farmers in the region. And there's been some big changes there recently, and I like the direction that they seem to be going with that, and so I'm excited about that. That's a real interesting project that really kind of affects all the sectors here in our community.
And I will say, from the people sitting on that, what Marshall brings to the table fills a huge void we have. So his expertise and his crossroads story here, it's a natural fit.
I thought you were going to say his affinity with food.
No.
yeah, that would be more likely. And it's been great. Some of the other things here. I guess that's about it. But again, anybody wants to talk about anything that we're doing currently, and one other thing, our video, the production company has the script. There will be some tweaks, but really the holdup has been the script. The first video was a natural. We can talk about our community easily. We can put it on paper. We can make beautiful shots of what we have going on here, and the production company did an amazing job. This video, shorter, way more tricky. Getting a script that talks about specifics and assets that we have and make it actually watchable is a completely different animal. But I am very pleased with where we're at. There's going to be changes. We're going to have to add one more line to the script, from a timing standpoint, to make everything work. I'd like this one to be much shorter, so it could be chopped into a real commercial, as opposed to just sort of an accompanying video. I want to be able to use this for a lot of different things. And we're actually starting to see the first video. People are starting to use it. I've had a number of calls about different businesses or organizations wanting to take parts of it, use the whole thing. You know, and as you know, I made this for everyone to be able to use it, and to be able to use the parts of it however they see fit. So that's one thing that I'm really happy about, so.
Back to the ag park.
Yeah.
I think it's important to point out that Easy Stack's moving to the secondary exit entrance to the ag park. So that'll give a nice entrance look to the park.
Absolutely. And
Instead of having a building that's been vacant for 5 years.
yeah, and they'll put, I mean, they've done such a great job. Big sign, a lot of movement over there, people coming and going, it's critical. Yeah.
Hey, Joe, has Mike got all his permits for the ag park now? I mean, is he
He's
being
got-
held up by DOT or anything?
I don't know that he's being held up by DOT, I think he's on track with the town. He's got subdivision approval for the first 4 lots, I think is what it is. And they're working on the water and sewer now.
I mean, I drive by it every day.
Yeah.
I would have expected with winter coming, there'd be a lot more work. I just wondered if it was being held up. And Dave, did we assist Mike in a grant application? Did you put in
Yes.
a grant that we assisted in? Have we heard on?
You won't hear any of those
We won't hear
grants. We
anything.
did 4 grants for 4 applicants, we won't hear anything until December. That's part of the CFA process.
That one, Jay and I did that one for him.
Marshall, a while back, you were trying to approach somebody in the state, so our video may or may not be able to play at that nice new tourism welcome center in the TI
Yes.
region. I'm assuming
That's a no-go.
May not heard that? Or-
Well, we heard, the story was, it was not gonna fly, most likely, and not in those terms. But they were going to reach out, you know, it was obviously the Visit Thousand Islands people, Corey, said that the state runs those very tightly, I guess is for lack of a better word, and that they have had little to no input, actually, in the process. That's not the right way to say. But the state has really.
It's not the way to say it, but it's the way to interpret it.
Yeah, because that's probably the way I can do it. But he was,
That's what
you know,
you heard, that's how
I'm
it
gonna
is.
say, would love to have that on the loop, you know, in their welcome center, but unlikely at this point to start. That doesn't mean in the future.
What about the airport though?
You know, and have not talked to Cindy.
The airport.
That's right.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and David mentioned
Sometimes
that.
there's a lot of waiting time in that, or whatever, not much to do.
As you're there waiting for your bags to come in 2 days later.
No, when you show up 2 hours early, it only takes 5 minutes to get on the plane.
Thanks, Marshall.
Thank you.
Jay?
Okay, Don, did you want me to reference the property? Okay, so the first thing I'll comment on is the recommendations regarding the Mansville parcel, 124.48-1-2. I provided a report to Don recommending that we recommend back to the county that this property is not suitable for development purposes and that they consider putting it back on the auction block. Rather than go in depth, you received a report, I'd be more than happy to answer your questions.
Where's your tree stand that you had to pick?
I would love to have a tree stand on that property. Unfortunately, it's in the village limits, and I have inquired with DEC, and they said no. So it is, I have a nice drop antler at home that I acquired in my travels on the property.
I read the report and I agree with it. I think we should, I mean, the report was pretty extensive and not to go into it today that I don't see that it's worth us pursuing any longer unless someone disagrees.
You know, the cost to develop a site today is enormous, and you never, look at the airport. I mean, we've got well over $1 million and probably closer to $1.5 million out there, and we're nowhere near putting anything on site yet. Yeah, the permitting and just the issue with the potential for wetlands and God knows whatever else, it's just enormously costly, so.
Do we need a motion to back away from that, or is it just a recommendation from the board?
I don't think we ever made a motion to explore it.
I I think it's just a recommendation. Motion at all.
Yeah, mainly informational, you know, we have a good relationship with the county on this. I mean, it's been, let's work together and see if it makes any sense. If it doesn't make any sense, let's not do it. And Jay's conclusions seem to make sense to me that it's not worth the effort, and so, there you go.
There was nothing we went looking for in the first place.
No, it was brought to us, so. So then on my regular report, I apologize that you didn't receive it until just recently. That actually is my report from May through August of 2019. I had on there July, but it was through August. I'll ask if there's any questions. The one thing I will report on here is the spring cropping issue. We have the Commissioner of Agriculture coming tomorrow, Richard Ball. He will be meeting with the Ag Development Council. Scott Gray's planning to attend. Darrell Albertine, representing the State Comptroller's Office, will be here. And we might have one or two other people in attendance, as well as the Ag Council. We are very concerned about what our farms are facing. The spring planting season, as you know, was very cold and wet. We are still looking at a concerning situation. I don't want to be over alarming, but we're estimating approximately 50% of the corn went in very late, 3 weeks behind in some cases farther behind, a little bit less behind. Looking at the fall weather patterns that are starting to develop, I hate to say this, but I'm concerned that the farms will not receive the weather that they need through October to allow that corn to mature so that they get a reasonable quality feed product for their livestock. Which, and Ed, I certainly encourage you to agree or disagree with me on this analysis. They will be dealing with feed for their animals that will be of minimal value. The only thing that I think our farms are looking at, a lot of farms have not, I don't believe, considered this at this point, is they are looking at leachate problems coming off of their bunk silos. They usually get juice running out of those bunk silos anyways, and that's actually the worst pollution issue that comes off of the farm. It's not the manure, it's the leachate off those silos. And with the moisture content they will have because of when they have to harvest that corn, and it won't be at its full maturity, they will be dealing with worse leachate problems than they've probably ever encountered. So we are very concerned about what our farms are facing. We are meeting with the commissioner tomorrow to discuss those. I will be putting in front of him an idea, if you will. It's not a full proposal yet, but an idea of trying to help farms recover the soil health on their fields. Because of the wet conditions this past spring, the soil compaction that they were causing because of having to go out when it was, very wet conditions, did tremendous damage to the capabilities of the soil. There are practices that can be utilized to restore that. It usually takes a 2 to 3 year period to use those practices and start to bring the soils back to where they should be. So we are going to propose to him a way of jump-starting that whole process, helping the farms, because right now, as you know, dairy prices have been down. They've been going through a very bad economic situation to begin with. This is that perfect storm continuing for them this year, and we certainly would love to see a little help come to our farms here in the county and throughout New York State, actually, because there are several counties that we believe have encountered the same situation. So I will be happy to answer any questions you have, Paul.
I was out riding around for the last few years, and I've noticed there's a lot more farms injecting manure now. Is that part of a CAFO plan, or is that just their decision to get better control over it? Or?
It's their decision to get better control. The farms are trying to be better stewards, and it does help them comply with their CAFO plan. By injecting, they're able to control the runoff better. They're actually able to harness the nutrients in that manure quicker into the soil, and it helps reduce the odor issues that they face too.
So are you seeing there's an increase in the number of farms that are
Oh,
doing
yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's expensive, but they're doing it.
It seems to be, people think it's expensive, but when they clear spread on a hot sunny day, they lose 80% of the nitrogen in the first 4 hours.
Yeah, it's going up into the atmosphere.
So by injecting it, it's just, you know, you get that nutrition.
I would point out that in the last 6 days, we've had 4 inches of rain.
Yeah.
And the soils are back being saturated again now.
Yeah, and I hate to say this, it would not surprise me if we had a killing frost at the end of September, early October, which will be terrible for our farms. Greg?
Are we still chasing any issues with cable being strung across fields?
I'm sorry, say that.
The cable,
The
being
cable
overhead
across
wires.
fields, are we still chasing?
That was ongoing throughout the summer, even though we were trying to get farms this spring to go out and check. I have not had any requests over the last month or two, but I had also got tired of answering the phone calls, so the cell phone for the guy that was with Spectrum, that got shared quite frequently, so that they would have fun.
There was a gentleman from Spectrum out with a height pole walking around in down Huntsville. I don't know if he was checking that, but they were checking the heights of all the cables that their contractors did.
Yeah, the contractors, and, you know, I understand Spectrum's situation. They were trying to meet state grant requirements as far as timing. The subcontractors they had did not care. They went out and just put up the lines, in some cases, lines 8 feet above the ground. And in some cases, I had farms that got so upset, even though I advised them not to do this, they went out and drove through them. And didn't help them because they still had a mess. But it was not a good situation.
Spectrum will be dealing with that for the next year. The travesties I saw were the ones they were putting in the ground. Those installs are gonna be full of water, and the frost is just gonna tear them apart. They'll be dealing with that.
Thanks, Jay.
Well-
One thing I have to say is, I think we got a great staff. I think this community is lucky to have somebody like you that has enough knowledge about what's happening out there, that you can get the state commissioner to pay attention and to get up here and start looking at it. I mean, that's kudos to you for the job that you're doing.
No, thank you, sir. That's
Jefferson County.
very appreciated.
I really promised them a free meal.
Right along with that, to reinforce that, Next Level Food Summit.
Yeah.
You haven't been there yet, have you?
No. Marshall and I are flying out in 2-3
2
weeks.
weeks, right?
You're the only economic developers at the whole conference? That's significant.
They
That's
did
what they applied,
a search for agricultural economic development, and we were the first that popped up. And so they extended the invitation to us here in Jefferson County. They thought we represented the whole state. I told them, I said, sure we do. We clarified the situation, but yeah, we popped up, and they want us to come out and to represent economic development. Apparently, Past participants have said they want people there from the, and this conference is purely invitation only. So we're excited to go. We don't know exactly how it'll turn out, but Marshall and I will be doing a lot of handshaking and talking about Jefferson County, and you can imagine when we talk about Jefferson County, how long that conversation lasts.
Another nice thing too is that in these guys going, we're allowed to extend an invitation to local producers, and we've got someone going, right? Or they're not?
Unfortunately not.
Oh, they can't.
We found out yesterday, so.
Oh, we had something going.
Yeah, we had somebody
I
go.
didn't realize that.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.
Don, we have some guests?
Yes, Mr. Shank, would you like to explain your presence here and what's going on in your world, please?
I would. Thanks, Mr. Alexander, and thank you, Board, for your time. And I'll be as brief as possible in respect of all your time involved here. My name is Brian Shank. I'm a municipal consultant serving to facilitate projects between municipalities, funding agencies, architects, engineers, so on and so forth. As you're probably all aware, there was a fire recently in the village of Sackett's Harbor. That fire basically displaced a commercial enterprise that contributes to the community, as well as displacing 10 to 15 employees, or essentially the families thereof. I reached out to the owner of that building, Mr. Scozafaba, and as well as the local village board, with an opportunity for a funding stream that's not often used, facilitated through Office of Community Renewal. And that funding stream's sole purpose is to make whole that enterprise that contributed to the community, but moreover, re-employ those folks that are now displaced. So in doing so, I have had several discussions with the board, particularly the mayor of Sackett's Harbor at this juncture, and inquiring whether or not they would be interested in facilitating this funding stream, because ultimately it would be administered through the local government. So with that said, I've begun to engage in that process towards facilitating that funding. In the process of that, and I hope not to confuse the issue, after speaking with the mayor, it was also discovered that there is an issue with the Old Stone Hospital. I think this board is very well aware of the issues in play there. A building that is becoming heavily in disrepair. And then I know that there has been some attempts to either revive that or create public-private partnerships in order to address that issue. So on both fronts, after speaking with members of the board and the mayor, it's discovered that yes, there's a need to try to help facilitate in both regards, both the burned building and the Old Stone Hospital. There's an enormous amount of work from the technical assistance perspective to get to the point where there's a funding stream or a plan to fund those projects. While the board is interested in engaging in that technical assistance, and I think we're all aware that most local boards don't budget for the unforeseen or the emergent, things of that nature. So while there's an interest, they don't seem to have a funding stream to facilitate the initial work to get to the funding stream. So the purpose of my addressing this board is to reach out to see if this board has an avenue to assist the town or the village of Sackett's Harbor with funding to get to that, to fund the technical assistance to get to the funding stream ultimately. And that's basically why I'm addressing this board today. I'd be happy to answer any questions to clarify, and again, I know I haven't given enough information, but I'm trying to be respectful of your time as well.
So Brian, is that funding that the village would then get reimbursed for, or not, or is it?
For the technical assistance
Yes.
initially, that's actually the issue. Okay. The technical assistance is not a reimbursable cost to get to the funding stream. Everything after funding is put in place, engineering and facilitating the program through fruition, those are reimbursable costs to the local government. the initial is not a reimbursable cost.
Brian, just a couple of little tidbits for background. First of all, would you introduce the two gentlemen who have joined you, because
Yes.
we don't know who they are.
I'm sorry. This is Mr. Dominic Gallo, my associate.
Nice to meet you.
And this is Mr. Scozafava, the owner of the building that was burned in the fire.
A couple of quick things, and the media is not present today, so I don't want to be in a position to speak for the village, but I do know that Eric Constance is going to assume responsibility for the mayor's position. As you know, Molly Riley has gone to work with the governor's office, and so there is a vacant position there. Eric is going to fill in temporarily, and I think extend beyond that for the next year or so. He called yesterday and we had some conversation about the subject that Brian is talking about. Just for background as well, staff has worked with the village quite extensively on trying to find a mechanism by which the hospital, the old hospital building on Madison Barrett, could be salvaged. It is a historical building of some significance. I think it was the first operating hospital in the United States for the United States Army, and there's a whole history there, and it represents a condition of the village. So we've been trying to do something to help them, and I can't say that we were very successful, although some time we spent trying to do that. But I think what Brian is saying is the agency in any position to afford some kind of a contribution toward this development activity that you're proposing for the village? Is that, am I overstating that, understating that, Brian?
I think you stated it perfectly, sir. Yes.
We, as an agency, as this board is well aware, we are limited by statute as to what we can contribute to in terms of public funding, because these are all public monies. Our responsibility is to use them, and this is a quote from the Comptroller's office, in relationship to IDA or LDC projects. And if it's not a project that we are responsible for in some way or another, the Comptroller does not like to see money generated, given that in spite of the fact that this is an excellent project and an opportunity, the village needs help. That is clear. Exactly how this organization might fit in this environment, I don't have a good answer this Thursday morning as we sit here, so I can't really recommend anything to anybody, but if any suggestions are out there, we would like to help. Insofar as the Stone Hospital is concerned, that's a much different question than filling the void of Mr. Scozafava, who, by the way, we're so terribly disappointed to see that happen. Our empathy, sympathy for you for that. It's a terrible blow to anybody. But the hospital, that's a far different question. We have proposed a couple of solutions. One would incorporate a public-private partnership, which I ultimately think that's going to be our best solution. There are people who would be interested in stepping up, or at least had expressed interest. So we had to kind of pursue these at two separate levels. So I'm just, Mr. Chairman, going to say that, staff will pledge to work closely with you and the village in trying to find solutions for this. I can't offer one off the top of my head this morning, unless somebody's got other.
Have you talked to the Sackets Harbor Local Development Corporation? My understanding is they have funds, and they've lent funds out in conjunction with this agency, and they may be able to be a funding stream for that.
I've not yet. After doing some research, it was really difficult for me to parse who the players are in that Sackets Harbor Local Development
The mayor
Corporation.
serves on the board. I would have that conversation because
I agree.
Yeah, Eric
they have monies that they can use around the village, and they've used them outside the village in the township too. I think they partnered us with David Cobb's project.
They did.
And they've done some others. So I would talk to the mayor about partnering with the LDC to look for funds.
And the point there that Paul's bringing up is the LLC is not saddled with the same restrictions that our agencies are.
Understood.
It's a different kettle of fish. They're, as Paul points out, their mission is to help the village. And so this certainly, in my view, fits clearly into that. That was going to be certainly one of my suggestions. And I know from talking with the acting mayor yesterday,
He is the mayor now. He's been appointed.
he has been appointed. But he was still waving the flag yesterday, so I'm not sure.
Brian, what order of magnitude level of initial investment would
It's
you throw out?
the initial investment is not super significant, and it really depends on the level of work that's involved. This funding stream is essentially, the requirements of it are a number of motions and resolutions of the local board, which it would be my function to prepare all of that, give them the timelines, so everything's very clearly laid out. It's a situation where can kicking absolutely must not take place, or it's not going to get done. So initially, and I'll just speak to the issue of the fire situation. Initially, we're talking a few $1,000s to get to that point. It's a pretty straightforward path. It just needs to be done in a very specific way. It's probably a multiple of that for an issue involving the Old Stone Hospital because of all of the circumstances that surround it. Yes, the burned building is in an historic district, yet not a historic building. All of those issues have been actually, those bridges are in process of being crossed. The Old Stone Hospital, a much broader issue requiring much broader buy-in, quite honestly. So yeah, a few thousand to get to the technical assistance point to funding for the burned out building, a multiple of that, which is something I would literally have to put pen and paper to, because there's so much more involved in the Old Stone Hospital.
Paul's suggestion was pretty valid benefits. I was thinking you were gonna say 50,000 or some bigger number.
So
LDC
if everything goes perfectly, when would you think this grant process would be awarding funds to accomplish the goals of cleanup and reconstruction?
Before winter, but from a practicality perspective, none of us would see that happening, breaking ground right around winter.
3 weeks around here.
Yeah.
Anything after the 15th of October is winter.
One of the interesting things about the emergent funding program through OCR is that it's a bit backward in the way that funding is awarded. It's there for emergent purposes that fit very specific criteria. And the hard yes actually comes before the application. So it literally goes to a committee. They say, yes, we think we can fund this. Goes to a committee. The committee agrees, okay, we're going to fund this. Here's your application, fill it out. It's completely backward of what we're all used to in terms of applying for funding.
Right?
Yeah, it's federal funds.
Oh, federal funds, okay.
Federal funds passed through Office of Community Renewal, administered by Community Development Block Grants, which is not, generally speaking, the community by and large would not qualify for standard CDBG funds because of the median income level. But this isn't about median income level of the community, it's the median income level of the people employed who are now displaced. So that's low to median income. So that's a qualifier. But after that passed through CDBG, it's passed through the village and administered on the local level. So there's several pass-throughs there, but.
Brian, is it true that this funding source requires Mr. Scozzafava to redevelop the same type of business that he had before? And is this something that you have in mind, Mr. Scozzafava?
I believe the first answer is yes,
It
and
is.
the second answer is yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so
It is a condition.
you're willing to
Absolutely.
put
It's
it
a
back
condition
as
of
It's not
funding.
gonna be a hotel or something different.
It's a condition of funding to replace what was there. The funding doesn't replace and completely outfit the building. Mr. Scozzafava would have to commit to outfitting the building. It would replace the building. in lieu of any potential, not in lieu of, but in the event that there are not enough funds through insurance recovery to replace the building. And I think I can speak freely and say there are not enough funds to replace the building
So
in its
it would
entirety.
provide for a shell, basically?
Yes.
And then you would round it out somehow inside?
Mhm.
Well,
Equip it,
yeah.
equip it.
And I think one thing that you maybe should mention is that although in the historic district, if you didn't already, this building did not conform to the historic district, so we've got a little latitude as to making it more relevant to the historical, feel of Sackett's Harbor. So in fact, we're looking to do just that.
It's actually a requirement not only of the funding. The first step, which I'm almost all the way through, and I apologize, I really don't mean to take up all your time. The first step was to clear a SHPO determination. They must determine whether or not it's an historic structure, whether or not it's in an historic district. Of course, it is, and we all know that. But here's how I expect the determination. I'm absolutely certain the determination will be returned that it is not a historic structure. It isn't a historic district. It was a non-conforming structure to begin with. However, anything that is built on that site must conform aesthetically to the historic district. So it has to have a facade that is Italianate or matching whatever structures are adjacent.
Well, and just to add to that, therein lies the reason there is a gap between what the insurance company represented as a replacement cost with what really will be the replacement cost, given the non-conforming nature prior, the conforming nature post, the construction costs therein. So,
Is the village backing this in some way at this point in time, or what are they?
They've given me permission to address SHPO for a determination, which is, and that would need to take place no matter what, if any development occurred on that site. But the emergent piece of that is that determination must take place before the site is completely demolished. Otherwise, the funding stream goes away. So I've agreed pro bono to address that piece. So the funding stream is not interrupted. It would jeopardize it in its entirety. So that determination should be in by Tuesday or so next week.
My last question, demolition is going to be both costly and you're going to need to worry about things like the possibility of asbestos in the building and all that. How is that going to occur? Who funds that? Does that come out of these grants?
no, let me address that. The insurance policy outside the coverage of rebuilding was a separate extension for cleanup and removal. Given the nature, the building having been built before 1974, needs to be tested for hazardous materials. The condition of the burn was so severe that testing could not be done in a safe way. So it is considered as if. Okay, so that means having an environmental engineer that's quarterbacking, if you will, this process. It has been bid out to licensed excavation professionals. We actually have an accepted bid now. The State Department of Labor is overseeing it and will permit this, and then it will be taken to an appropriate fill that can handle such materials. We don't know that those materials are there. It has to be handled as if. And that process has been ongoing for 2 weeks. We expect it to be wrapped up sometime next week. A 3 to 5 day cleanup once everything's been cleared by the state.
Ballpark figure, rough figure to do that cleanup, 30,000, 20?
Roughly, yes. You
30.
nailed it. So, yeah, not 30. That's just, I don't know if that includes tipping. I know that includes the actual removal.
One thing I would suggest, it sounds like you could use $5,000 right now would get you off and running pay for your services, get to the next phase of which you've got some promising opportunity for grant funding.
Yes.
The Community Foundation has one of their areas that they're looking to expand into helping push and improve is preservation of historical buildings in the area. I would pursue, because of the timeliness and the availability for them to make quick and short decisions, you may be a perfect fit for maybe a $5,000 grant from the Community Foundation under the Historic Building Preservation, particularly in Sackett.
And Eric would be familiar with that.
Good point.
Okay.
And if not, we can
I was gonna ask, can we have staff at least allow Brian all of these contacts, names and phone numbers?
Yeah, it would be very helpful.
We're throwing a lot of information out
Yeah.
that maybe is firsthand to us and.
Sure, yeah. I'm a former mayor, so I really get how all these contacts are all over the place. Actually, not former, I still serve.
And
so.
the TSA, Preservation League of New York State, do they still have technical assistance funds available? for
They
grants?
do, but Preservation League is more about doing surveys for potential historic districts. In fact, I just engaged Preservation League for a historic resources survey. Primarily, that's what they do is surveys to render opinions on historic districts.
And clearly, when we get into things like equipment and such, we do have facilities to lease back equipment purchases, right? We've done that stuff before. Or did we get out of that? Seems like we've done it. I just don't remember what the name of the loan is.
The microphone?
No, we did it through USDA on the equipment,
Yeah.
the vodka still, and a number of other
It's like
things.
the distillery.
They were grants from USDA.
Okay, so those were not.
And
like
we
through
simply
us
administered
directly.
the grant.
Okay.
We had to take title to the equipment, and at the end of a period of time,
Okay.
we
I
signed
know
over.
those are sort of pre my time. I didn't know how
Yep.
the monies were
Yep.
loaned.
And that was, they were USDA
We've had
grants.
a couple success
Rural
stories. and a
rural
couple,
development grants,
failures.
which has gone
I
away.
would, so the essence of our time, I'd say, work with our staff to help you out the best they can, and good luck.
Yeah, because I think it sounds like there's a gap in the rebuilding of the inside as well that possibly fits us better.
And maybe we can help there. We'd have to look at that very carefully, but maybe.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And it was a community.
Northern New York Community Foundation, right here in Watertown.
Community Foundation, okay?
Northern New York
And the mayor has those contacts?
We should.
If he doesn't, call me, we'll be happy to.
They also,
Give the phone number.
yeah, they also administer an economic development fund that they got from the county chamber that Eric will be familiar with too, so.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time.
Unfinished business? Counselor, anything?
No.
Dan, new business.
First of all, let me acknowledge Mr. Valentine again. He comes in every month for free coffee.
I didn't see him get it.
Seriously, we always appreciate Ed showing up. Ed is one of our leading business people who occupy space in corporate park. And we still have issues to be resolved there, and it's been a tussle. We had hoped that a legal action that was pending was going to be resolved, and we could move forward with a couple of things we've been talking about, but so far, no luck. But we're working on that, and even that he does not know. A couple of other quick things, Dave, if I may, and I'll make it quick. First of all, I want to acknowledge one of the most disappointing things that has happened to me since I've been doing this job, and that is the closure of Mr. Rick's Bakery. And, I say that because Mr. Rick Paul Alberry represents small business in our community, and Paul has been not only suffering from significant health issues, which is really the driving force, but he ran into a variety of problems with all of the governing agencies that interact with food service and buildings and entrances to highways, and there was a cacophony of problems that Paul had undertaken when he moved to his new site out there on Route 11. The agency and staff worked really hard with him trying to make it work. Our wonderful CFO and yours truly spent a number of hours with him trying to help him with banks and help him with the DOT and with the DEC, and God knows every other agency. So it's a small business, and will it change the balance in the community? Probably not, but I can't tell you how disappointed I was. And anyway, just to let you know that he is closed, and we've lost another bakery, which is the second in the last year, I guess.
So how's that going to work moving forward? Is he gonna try and sell the business? Is there opportunity to sell? So which case is our interest in the micro loan equipment staying in place
Yes.
until the sale
The building is up for sale.
as a bakery?
Well, there's a good question, Ed. I really don't know. The appetite for a bakery in the community as identified in Mr. Rick, which is, you know, small local bakery type of thing, as opposed to the big chains now, which many of them have their own bakeries in-house. And so it's put a lot of pressure on it. So I don't know. Obviously, we stay in touch with them as best we can, and Paul had made overtures to Lyle and I and to Dave many times during his difficult times over the last couple of years with his health. So he stayed close. I presume his son is going to do the same thing, and we'll try to do our best to help whatever is the
Do we
process.
have liens against those assets?
We do. We're in a second position, however, so,
Is there much equity there?
no.
In all candor?
Honestly,
Don't
we'll be
expect
writing
much.
that off, without a doubt.
You're pretty confident of that right now?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. Two other quick things. First of all, Commissioner Ball, as you heard Jay say, is coming in tomorrow. All board members are most welcome to join us for that meeting. In fact, it would be of great help for the commissioner to see board members who are not necessarily ag-related people, but just people in the community who are interested in agriculture as part of our overall economy. So please come in, you're welcome to do that. And lastly, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, we begin the controller's audit. You probably have seen my emails about this. This will be probably a difficult time for staff, only because we're pretty busy as it normally is, and now we're going to be involved in a very intensive audit. They anticipate being here, 3 of them, between 60 and 90 days, which should give them time to identify whether or not the toilet paper rolls are adequately equipped and so on. In addition to this, we anticipate, or at least are hoping, that we will begin to be able to draw attention to what's going on in the back of the building here with respect to our new file system. And Peggy's been following up with the grants and things that we are required to do with that. So we may end up with the controller and their people in here doing an audit while we begin construction on the new file systems out back, and it's going to be hell on wheels, I will tell you. Part of the problem is we have a controller's auditor who is coming into town here. This will be the second audit he's ever done. He's leading the charge. So you can understand we probably are going to be taking these people to school on how IDAs work and so on, which takes extra time because you have to explain every damn detail why we did this as opposed to that. And that's going to require poor Lyle and others to go crazy. Peggy and Joy will be extremely busy. Why am I saying this to you? First of all, at 9 o'clock tomorrow, Dave, as chairman, is coming in and listening to their initial pitch, but every one of the boards is welcome to be here to understand what it is they're going to try to do. Ironically, one of the members of the senior controller staff will be in the office at the same time with the ag commissioner. We'll see how all this plays out. I have no idea. We will not, frankly, be quite as responsive to your requirements, as we have been, I hope we have been, because we will probably be engaged in some other work, and the controller does not want to be considered anything less than primary when they're here doing the audit. We will set up the office next door for them. We may end up having to set up 2 offices for them, where they can set up permanent engagement. I don't know exactly what members of the board will be contacted. I assume all of you at some point will be reached out to, so don't be surprised if somebody identifying themselves as somebody from the controller's office wants to know something. I don't know what that would be. We've never been through one of these. We've been through several audits, but not a controller's
I
audit.
haven't spent all the money you handed me, Don, yet.
So Dave, you're not planning on any vacation time in case they drag down off the jail?
Thanks, Jim.
You might wanna set them up back there, you know, don't make them too comfortable.
Yeah. Anyway, that's it.
Yeah, that becomes a time when the crap flows downhill.
Yeah, that's right. Where is the janitor when you need him?
Anything else for the LDC?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor, aye? Opposed, abstained, adjourned. We have all the